The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting golden rays across the breakfast room where Princess Catherine sat quietly with her cup of tea. Her usual bright smile seemed dimmed today, replaced by a thoughtful expression that spoke of sleepless nights and worried thoughts. The past few weeks had been particularly challenging for the royal family, with increased public scrutiny and a packed schedule of official engagements that left little time for personal moments. William entered the room with his characteristic gentle stride, immediately noticing the subtle changes in his wife's demeanor. After 15 years together, he had learned to read the smallest shifts in her expressions, the way her shoulders carried tension when she was overwhelmed, and how her fingers would absently twist her wedding ring when deep in thought. This morning, all these familiar signs were present. "Good morning, my love," he said softly, placing a tender kiss on the top of her head before settling into the chair beside her. The simple gesture carried years of shared understanding and unwavering support. Catherine looked up at him with grateful eyes, managing a small smile that didn't quite reach her usual radiance. The couple had been navigating an especially demanding period in their royal duties. Catherine had recently taken on several new patronages, including a mental health initiative for young mothers and a campaign supporting early childhood development. The causes were deeply meaningful to her, but the emotional weight of the stories she encountered daily, combined with her responsibilities as a mother to George, Charlotte, and Louis, had begun to take its toll. William had watched his wife pour herself into these commitments with her characteristic dedication and compassion. She would return from visits to support centers with tears in her eyes, moved by the struggles of the families she met. Late into the night, he would find her at her desk, carefully crafting speeches and reviewing proposals, determined to make a meaningful difference in every life she touched. The previous evening had been particularly difficult. Catherine had visited a support group for mothers experiencing postpartum depression, and one young woman's story had struck her deeply. The mother, barely 22, had shared her feelings of isolation and fear, describing how she felt like she was failing her baby despite her overwhelming love for the child. Catherine had listened with her whole heart, offering comfort and resources, but the encounter had left her questioning whether she was doing enough to help. As William observed his wife's quiet contemplation over breakfast, he made a decision that would soon surprise not only Catherine but also capture the hearts of royal watchers around the world. He understood that sometimes the most powerful gestures come not from grand public displays but from intimate moments of recognition and love. "Catherine," he said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I've been thinking about something, and I want to share it with you." His voice carried a warmth that immediately drew her attention. "You've been carrying so much lately, and I see how deeply you feel for everyone you're trying to help. Your compassion is one of the things I admire most about you, but I also see how it weighs on your heart." Catherine squeezed his hand, touched by his understanding. Throughout their marriage, William had been her anchor during challenging times, always knowing exactly what to say or do to remind her of her strength. "I just want to make sure I'm making a real difference," she replied softly. "Sometimes I wonder if what we do actually changes anything for these families." William's expression grew serious as he considered her words. He knew that behind the polished public appearances and carefully orchestrated royal visits lay genuine human connections and real impact. He had seen firsthand how Catherine's presence could transform a room, how her authentic interest in people's stories made them feel heard and valued. But he also understood her need for reassurance that her efforts were meaningful. "Do you remember the letter that arrived last week from Sarah?" he asked, referring to a young mother they had met at a family support center 6 months earlier. "She wrote to thank you for the conversation you had with her about feeling overwhelmed as a new parent. She said that knowing even a princess had moments of doubt made her feel less alone. That's the difference you make, Catherine. You give people permission to be human." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of small feet running down the hallway, followed by the familiar chaos that accompanied their 3 children's morning routine. Louis burst through the door first, his hair tousled from sleep, followed closely by Charlotte, who was already dressed and ready for the day. George appeared moments later, carrying a book and wearing the serious expression he often adopted when absorbed in learning something new. "Mummy! Daddy!" Louis exclaimed, climbing onto Catherine's lap with the fearless enthusiasm of a 5-year-old. "Can we have pancakes for breakfast? Mrs. Davies said she might make them if we ask very nicely." His bright eyes sparkled with hope as he looked between his parents. Catherine's face lit up at her youngest son's request, the first genuine smile William had seen from her that morning. "I think that sounds like a wonderful idea," she said, kissing Louis's cheek. "Shall we go ask her together?" As the family made their way to the kitchen, William hung back slightly, watching Catherine interact with their children. The transformation was immediate and beautiful. Her natural maternal instincts kicked in, and she was fully present with Louis's excitement, Charlotte's questions about her upcoming school project, and George's latest fascination with medieval history. It was in moments like these that William was reminded of why he had fallen in love with Catherine all those years ago at university. Her ability to be completely authentic, whether she was comforting a struggling mother or laughing at their son's silly jokes, was what made her extraordinary. She brought the same genuine care to her royal duties that she showed their children every day. The kitchen at Kensington Palace was filled with the warm aroma of pancakes and fresh fruit as Mrs. Davies, their longtime cook, fussed over the children with grandmotherly affection. Catherine helped serve breakfast, engaging in the easy conversation that made their home feel normal despite the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. William found himself formulating a plan as he watched his family around the breakfast table. He had been thinking for weeks about how to show Catherine not only how much he appreciated her dedication but also how much her work truly mattered. The idea that was taking shape would require careful coordination and absolute secrecy, but he knew it would be worth every effort. After breakfast, as Catherine prepared for her scheduled visit to a children's hospital, William walked with her to the car. The morning had restored some of her energy, but he could still see traces of the emotional exhaustion she had been carrying. "I love you," he said simply, taking her hands in his as they stood beside the waiting vehicle. "And I'm proud of the woman you are, the mother you are, and the difference you make in this world. Don't ever doubt that." Catherine felt tears prick at her eyes, moved by the sincerity in her husband's voice. "I love you too," she replied, standing on her toes to kiss him goodbye. "Thank you for always knowing exactly what I need to hear." As William watched her car disappear through the palace gates, he pulled out his phone and began making the first of several calls that would set his plan in motion. His private secretary answered immediately, accustomed to receiving requests at all hours. "James, I need your help with something special for Catherine," William began, his voice filled with determination. "It's going to require some coordination, but I think we can create something truly meaningful." The wheels were now in motion for what would become one of the most touching gestures in recent royal history, though Catherine would remain completely unaware of the surprise being planned for her. William spent the rest of the morning making calls and sending carefully worded messages, each conversation bringing his vision closer to reality. Meanwhile, Catherine's hospital visit proceeded with its usual mix of heartwarming and heartbreaking moments. She spent time with young patients, reading stories and playing games, her natural warmth bringing smiles to faces that had seen too much suffering for their young years. The medical staff spoke to her about their challenges and successes, and she listened with the focused attention that had become her trademark. As always, Catherine left the hospital feeling both fulfilled and emotionally drained. The children she met would stay with her, their brave faces and fighting spirits serving as both inspiration and reminder of how much work remained to be done. She had learned to carry these feelings as part of her role, but they never became easier to bear. The car ride back to the palace gave her time to reflect on the morning's experiences and William's supportive words. She thought about the young mother from the previous evening's support group and wondered if she had found any peace overnight. These personal connections were what drove Catherine's passion for her charitable work, but they also made the emotional toll unavoidable. When she arrived home, William was waiting in the garden where their children were playing. The sight of her family enjoying the sunshine immediately lifted her spirits. George was teaching Charlotte how to properly kick a football while Louis attempted to join in with his characteristic enthusiasm and limited coordination. "How was the hospital?" William asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they watched their children play. "Inspiring and heartbreaking, as always," Catherine replied, leaning back against his chest. "There was a little girl named Emma who reminded me so much of Charlotte at that age. She's fighting leukemia, but she spent our entire visit telling me about the story she's writing. She wants to be an author when she grows up." William held her a little tighter, understanding without words how these encounters affected her. "She sounds remarkable. Just like someone else I know who never gives up on the people she cares about." As the afternoon wore on, William's plan continued to develop behind the scenes. Phone calls were made to various organizations Catherine supported, arrangements were coordinated with palace staff, and a very special surprise began to take shape. Every detail was carefully considered to ensure the gesture would be as meaningful as William intended. The family spent a quiet evening together, with Catherine helping the children with homework while William reviewed his own upcoming engagements. The routine domestic scene was a stark contrast to their public lives, but these moments of normalcy were precious to both of them. As they prepared for bed, Catherine felt grateful for William's unwavering support throughout what had been a challenging day. She had no idea that in just a few days, he would surprise her with a gesture so thoughtful and perfectly timed that it would not only restore her faith in her work but also remind her why their partnership was so strong. The stage was set for something beautiful to unfold, though Catherine remained blissfully unaware of the love and planning that was about to culminate in a moment that would touch hearts far beyond the palace walls. 3 days had passed since William began orchestrating his surprise for Catherine, and the pieces were finally falling into place. His private secretary had worked tirelessly to coordinate with multiple organizations, ensuring every detail would align perfectly with Catherine's existing schedule. The beauty of William's plan lay in its simplicity and authenticity. It would feel completely natural while being anything but coincidental. Catherine had maintained her usual schedule during these days, unaware of the careful planning happening around her. She attended a roundtable discussion on early childhood development, visited a primary school to launch a new literacy program, and spent precious time with George, Charlotte, and Louis. Each day brought its own challenges and rewards, but William noticed she was still carrying that subtle weight of uncertainty about her impact. On Wednesday morning, Catherine was scheduled to visit Sunshine House, a family support center in South London that she had been patronizing for 2 years. The center provided resources and counseling for mothers experiencing various challenges, from postpartum depression to financial difficulties. It was one of Catherine's favorite commitments because the work felt so immediate and personal. William watched from the breakfast table as Catherine prepared for her visit, adjusting her outfit and reviewing her notes about the families she would be meeting. She had developed a ritual of learning something personal about each person before her visits, ensuring their conversations would feel genuine and meaningful. "The weather looks perfect for your visit today," William commented casually, though his heart was racing with anticipation. "I hope the mothers you meet are as receptive as they usually are." Catherine smiled, appreciating his interest in her work. "There's a new support group starting today for mothers of children with special needs. I'm particularly looking forward to meeting them. Sometimes those conversations teach me as much as they hopefully help the participants." As Catherine gathered her things and prepared to leave, William pulled her into a gentle embrace. "Have a wonderful day, my love. I have a feeling it's going to be quite special." His words carried extra meaning that Catherine couldn't yet understand, but the warmth in his voice stayed with her as she left for her engagement. The drive to Sunshine House gave Catherine time to center herself for the day ahead. She had learned over the years that these visits required her to be emotionally present while maintaining professional boundaries. The stories she heard were often heartbreaking, but the resilience of the women she met never failed to inspire her. Margaret Williams, the center's director, greeted Catherine at the entrance with her usual warm enthusiasm. Margaret had been running Sunshine House for over a decade and had developed a deep appreciation for Catherine's genuine commitment to their work. Unlike some royal visitors who appeared for photo opportunities, Catherine consistently demonstrated real interest in the center's progress and challenges. "Your Royal Highness, we're so delighted to have you here today," Margaret said as they walked through the bright, welcoming lobby. "We've had some wonderful developments since your last visit that I'm excited to share with you." As they toured the facility, Catherine was impressed by the recent improvements. New artwork created by children in the center's programs decorated the walls, and a recently renovated play area provided a safe space for mothers to bring their children during sessions. The atmosphere felt hopeful and nurturing, exactly what vulnerable families needed. "The mothers in our programs have been asking about your visit for weeks," Margaret explained as they approached the main meeting room. Your last conversation with our postpartum depression support group had such a lasting impact. Several women mentioned how much it meant to hear you speak openly about the challenges of motherhood. Catherine felt a familiar flutter of nervousness mixed with anticipation. These conversations were never easy, but they were among the most important work she did. She had learned to share appropriate aspects of her own experiences as a mother, helping other women feel less isolated in their struggles. The meeting room was arranged in a comfortable circle with soft lighting and fresh flowers, details that Margaret knew helped create a welcoming atmosphere for difficult conversations. As Catherine entered, 12 women looked up with expressions ranging from shy curiosity to open warmth. Some were new mothers still adjusting to their changed lives, while others were more experienced parents facing unexpected challenges. "Please, don't let me interrupt your usual routine," Catherine said as she took a seat in the circle. "I'm here to listen and learn from all of you. Your experiences and insights are what make visits like this so valuable for me." What Catherine didn't know was that among the women in the circle was Sarah Mitchell, the young mother whose letter William had mentioned at breakfast several days earlier. Sarah's presence wasn't a coincidence. William had worked with Margaret to ensure she would be there, knowing that meeting her face-to-face would provide Catherine with tangible evidence of her impact. As the group began sharing their experiences, Catherine was struck by the honesty and vulnerability of their stories. Emma, a mother of twins, spoke about feeling overwhelmed by the constant demands of caring for 2 infants. Lisa shared her struggles with returning to work after maternity leave and feeling like she was failing at both motherhood and her career. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she looked directly at Catherine with tears in her eyes. "I wanted to be here today because 6 months ago, I was in a very dark place. I felt like I was failing my daughter every day, and I couldn't see how things would ever get better." Catherine leaned forward slightly, her complete attention focused on Sarah. She remembered their previous meeting vividly. Sarah had been one of the quieter participants, but her pain had been palpable. "I wrote you a letter a few weeks ago," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. "I wanted to thank you for something you said during your last visit. You told us that even you had moments of doubt about whether you were doing enough as a mother. That simple admission changed everything for me." The room fell silent as Sarah's words hung in the air. Catherine felt her breath catch, realizing this was the letter William had mentioned. She had received so many letters over the years that individual ones sometimes blurred together, but William had clearly remembered this one's significance. "You helped me understand that struggling doesn't mean failing," Sarah explained. "When I saw that someone I admired could also have doubts, it gave me permission to be imperfect. I started asking for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. I began therapy, joined this support group, and slowly started to heal." Catherine felt tears prick at her eyes, moved by Sarah's courage in sharing such personal growth. "Sarah, your strength in seeking help and sharing your story today shows how brave you are. You're not just healing yourself, you're helping every woman in this room feel less alone." As the conversation continued, other women began sharing how Sarah's openness had helped them, creating a ripple effect of support and understanding. Catherine realized she was witnessing something beautiful, a community of women lifting each other up through shared vulnerability and mutual encouragement. Margaret watched the interaction with deep satisfaction, knowing that William's request for Sarah to attend had created exactly the kind of meaningful moment that made Catherine's work so powerful. The careful planning had resulted in an organic, genuine experience that would resonate with everyone present. After the formal group session ended, Catherine spent individual time with several of the mothers, including an extended conversation with Sarah. They talked about the ongoing journey of motherhood, the importance of self-compassion, and the ways that sharing struggles could become a source of strength. "I want you to know that your letter meant everything to me," Catherine told Sarah as their conversation wound down. "Sometimes in this role, I wonder if anything I do really makes a difference. Your words reminded me why this work matters so much." Sarah smiled through her tears. "You changed my life by just being real with us. That's the most powerful thing anyone can do, show up as a human being, not just a title." As Catherine prepared to leave Sunshine House, Margaret walked her to the car, both women energized by the morning's meaningful exchanges. "Your Royal Highness, I hope you know how much your continued support means to our families. The women you met today will carry this experience with them long after the cameras are gone. During the drive back to Kensington Palace, Catherine reflected on the morning's events with a sense of renewed purpose. Sarah's story had provided exactly the kind of validation she hadn't realized she desperately needed. The connection between her previous visit and Sarah's healing journey demonstrated the long-term impact that her work could have. She thought about William's words from earlier in the week about giving people permission to be human. Today's experience had shown her the truth of that statement in vivid detail. By sharing her own moments of doubt and uncertainty, she had helped create space for others to be vulnerable and seek support. When Catherine arrived home, she found William in his study, apparently absorbed in paperwork. He looked up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral despite his anticipation about how the morning had unfolded. "How was your visit to Sunshine House?" he asked, setting aside his documents to give her his full attention. Catherine's face lit up with an excitement that William hadn't seen in weeks. "It was incredible, William. There was a young mother there named Sarah. She was the one who wrote that letter you mentioned. Meeting her today and hearing about her journey was exactly what I needed." William's heart swelled with satisfaction, though he maintained his surprised expression. "That's wonderful, darling. What made it so special?" As Catherine recounted the morning's events, William listened with genuine interest despite knowing many of the details already. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and seeing her confidence restored made every minute of planning worthwhile. She described Sarah's courage, the group's supportive dynamic, and her own renewed sense of purpose. "I feel like I finally understand something important," Catherine concluded. "The work we do doesn't always show immediate results, but that doesn't mean it isn't making a difference. Sometimes the impact takes months or even years to fully manifest." William reached across his desk to take her hand. "I'm so glad you had that realization today. You've always made a difference, Catherine. Sometimes we just need the right moment to see it clearly." That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Catherine shared age-appropriate details about her day with the children. George was particularly interested in the concept of helping other families, while Charlotte wanted to know if the mothers had children her age. Louis, ever practical, asked if they had good snacks at the meeting. After the children were settled for the night, William and Catherine sat together in their private sitting room, enjoying the quiet intimacy that ended their busy days. Catherine felt more relaxed and content than she had in weeks, her earlier doubts replaced by renewed confidence in her work. "Thank you for listening this morning when I was feeling uncertain," she told William. "And thank you for remembering that letter from Sarah. Knowing you pay attention to those details means so much to me." William smiled, satisfied that the first part of his larger plan had worked perfectly. "Your work matters to me because it matters to you. I love seeing you passionate about making a difference." As they prepared for bed, Catherine felt grateful for the day's unexpected gift of reassurance and connection. She had no idea that William's surprises were far from over, or that the meaningful encounter with Sarah had been carefully orchestrated as part of a much larger gesture of love and appreciation. The stage was now set for the next phase of William's plan, which would soon reveal the true extent of his thoughtfulness and his deep understanding of what Catherine needed most. The success of Catherine's visit to Sunshine House had energized William's determination to complete his surprise. Over the next several days, he worked with increasing intensity to coordinate the final elements of his plan. His private secretary, James, had become an invaluable collaborator, understanding both the scope of William's vision and the need for absolute discretion. "The video messages are coming in beautifully," James reported during one of their morning briefings. "We've received responses from families in 12 different countries, and each one is more moving than the last. The production team is working around the clock to compile everything into a cohesive presentation." William nodded with satisfaction while reviewing the timeline on his desk. "What about the surprise guests for the ceremony? Have we confirmed everyone's availability?" "Yes, sir. Margaret from Sunshine House was delighted to participate, and Sarah has agreed to join us as well. The mothers from the various support groups are all planning to attend, and several families from overseas will be joining via video link. It's going to be quite an emotional gathering." The ceremony William was orchestrating would take place in just 3 days, during what Catherine believed would be a routine visit to another of her patronages. He had worked with the organization to transform their regular quarterly meeting into something extraordinary, ensuring that Catherine would walk into a room filled with people whose lives she had touched over the years. Meanwhile, Catherine continued her regular schedule, blissfully unaware of the intensive planning happening around her. She attended a school opening in Hampshire, where she was delighted to see the impact of a literacy program she had supported. The children performed a special reading presentation, and Catherine was moved by their enthusiasm for learning. During the car ride home from Hampshire, Catherine received a call from her private secretary about her schedule for the following week. "Your Royal Highness, I wanted to confirm your visit to Hope Gardens Community Center on Friday. They're quite excited about your quarterly check-in with their family programs." Catherine smiled, remembering her previous visits to Hope Gardens. It was a smaller organization than some of her other patronages, but their work with disadvantaged families was exceptional. "I'm looking forward to it. Have they mentioned anything specific they'd like to discuss?" "They mentioned wanting to share some updates about the families you've worked with over the past year," her secretary replied carefully, following William's instructions to keep the response vague but truthful. "I believe they have some success stories they're eager to tell you about." That evening, Catherine mentioned the upcoming visit to William over dinner. "I'm visiting Hope Gardens on Friday. It's one of my favorite smaller patronages. The work they do is so grassroots and immediate. Sometimes I think those intimate settings allow for the most meaningful connections." William nodded thoughtfully, his heart racing with anticipation. "That sounds wonderful. I hope they have good news to share with you." He paused, as if considering something. "Actually, I was wondering if you might be open to having some company on Friday. I've been wanting to learn more about Hope Gardens, and I thought it might be nice to see one of your patronages in action." Catherine looked up in surprise. While William occasionally joined her for major events, he rarely attended her smaller, more routine visits. "Of course, you're always welcome to join me. I'd love to show you what they're doing there. Are you sure you have time in your schedule?" "I'll make time," William replied with a warmth that made Catherine's heart flutter. Even after all these years, his desire to be involved in her work still touched her deeply. The remaining days passed quickly, with William making final adjustments to his plan while maintaining the appearance of normal routine. He coordinated with Hope Gardens director, Elena Rodriguez, who was honored to be part of such a meaningful surprise. Elena had worked tirelessly to ensure the event would feel authentic while celebrating Catherine's genuine impact on their community. On Thursday evening, William found himself unusually nervous about the next day's surprise. He had orchestrated numerous public events throughout his royal career, but none had felt as personal or important as this gesture for Catherine. He wanted every detail to perfectly reflect his appreciation for her dedication and his understanding of what would be most meaningful to her. "Are you feeling all right?" Catherine asked as they prepared for bed. "You seem a bit distracted tonight." William pulled her into his arms, drawing comfort from her presence. "I'm just thinking about some upcoming commitments. Nothing you need to worry about." He kissed her forehead gently. "I'm looking forward to joining you tomorrow. It will be nice to spend some time together outside of our usual routine." Friday morning dawned bright and clear, with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made London particularly beautiful. Catherine dressed carefully for the visit, choosing a navy blue dress that was both professional and approachable. She had learned over the years that her clothing choices could impact how comfortable people felt during their conversations. As they traveled to Hope Gardens together, William maintained an easy conversation about their children's upcoming school activities and their plans for the weekend. Catherine appreciated having him beside her, enjoying the rare opportunity to share this aspect of her work with him directly. "Tell me more about Elena and her team," William requested as their car approached the community center. "How long have they been operating Hope Gardens?" Catherine's eyes lit up as she described the organization. "Elena started Hope Gardens 8 years ago after working as a social worker. She saw how many families were falling through the cracks of larger systems and wanted to create something more personal and immediate. They focus on holistic family support, everything from parenting classes to job training to mental health resources. The community center was a converted Victorian building that had been beautifully renovated while maintaining its welcoming, neighborhood character. Elena met them at the entrance, her warm smile radiating genuine enthusiasm for Catherine's visit. Your Royal Highness, she greeted them formally before her expression softened. Catherine, it's so wonderful to see you again. And, Prince William, we're absolutely delighted that you could join us today. As they entered the building, Catherine noticed an unusual energy in the air. Staff members seemed particularly excited, and she could hear more activity than usual coming from the main meeting room. It sounds like you have a busy day planned, she observed. Elena exchanged a quick glance with William before responding. We do have something special prepared for you today. We wanted to take this quarterly visit as an opportunity to share some updates that we think will be particularly meaningful. They made their way through the center's corridors, passing photographs that documented various programs and family success stories. Catherine paused at several images, recognizing faces from previous visits and feeling proud of the progress she could see in the updated photos. As they approached the main meeting room, Elena turned to Catherine with barely contained excitement. Catherine, over the past year, we've been documenting the long-term impact of your involvement with our families. Today, we wanted to share some of those stories with you in person. Elena opened the door to reveal a room filled with familiar faces, mothers from various support groups Catherine had visited, children who had participated in programs she had supported, and several staff members from different organizations she patronized. At the front of the room, a large screen displayed the words "Thank you, Princess Catherine" in elegant script. Catherine gasped in surprise, her hand flying to her heart as she took in the unexpected gathering. Elena, what is this? She asked, though her voice was already thick with emotion as she began to recognize individual faces in the crowd. William placed his hand gently on her back, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him as he watched Catherine's reaction. This is a celebration of you, my love, and the incredible difference you make in people's lives. Sarah Mitchell stood up from her seat in the front row, holding the hand of a beautiful little girl with dark curls and bright eyes. Catherine, I wanted you to meet my daughter, Emily. She's the reason I fought so hard to get better, and she's here today because you helped me believe I could be the mother she deserved. Tears began flowing down Catherine's face as she knelt to Emily's level. Hello, sweetheart. You're absolutely beautiful. Your mummy is so brave and strong. Emily, who was nearly 3 years old, smiled shyly before offering Catherine a small bouquet of hand-picked flowers. Mummy said you helped her be happy again, she said in her sweet, clear voice. The room erupted in gentle applause as Catherine accepted the flowers, completely overwhelmed by the gesture's simplicity and meaning. She stood and embraced Sarah warmly, both women crying tears of joy and gratitude. Elena stepped forward to address the gathering. For the past month, we've been reaching out to families and individuals whose lives Catherine has touched through her work. What we discovered was extraordinary, story after story of people who found hope, healing, and strength through their connections with her. The large screen came to life with a video compilation that William had been secretly coordinating for weeks. One by one, families from around the world appeared on screen, sharing brief messages about how Catherine's work had impacted their lives. There was the mother from Canada who had started a support group inspired by Catherine's mental health advocacy. A father from Australia spoke about how Catherine's visit to his son's hospital had given their family strength during their darkest moment. Each video message was brief but powerful, creating a mosaic of gratitude that stretched across continents and cultures. Catherine watched in amazement, recognizing some faces and learning about ripple effects of her work that she had never imagined. We wanted to show you, Elena explained as the video concluded, that your impact extends far beyond the immediate conversations you have. Every person you meet goes home changed, and they carry that change to their families, their communities, their own work helping others. Margaret from Sunshine House stood to speak next. Catherine, in my 20 years of social work, I've never seen anyone create the kind of authentic connections that you do. You don't just visit our programs, you become part of our community. The mothers in our support groups often say that meeting you made them feel seen and valued in a way they hadn't experienced before. As person after person shared their experiences, Catherine began to understand the true scope of what William had orchestrated. This wasn't just a surprise event, it was a carefully crafted demonstration of her life's work, assembled by the person who knew her best and understood exactly what she needed to hear. Dr. James Harrison, a child psychologist who had worked with Catherine on several initiatives, addressed the gathering. What makes Catherine's approach so effective is her genuine curiosity about people's experiences. She asks questions not because she has to, but because she truly wants to understand. That authentic interest creates space for healing and growth. Throughout the presentations, William watched Catherine's face transform from surprise to overwhelming gratitude. He could see the weight she had been carrying gradually lifting as she absorbed the evidence of her positive impact. This was exactly what he had hoped for when he first conceived of the surprise. The formal presentations concluded with Elena inviting Catherine to share any thoughts she might have. Catherine stood slowly, visibly emotional but radiating a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. "I honestly don't know what to say," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "When I started this work, I hoped to make some small difference in people's lives. I never imagined that I would receive so much more than I could ever give. Each of you has taught me something important about resilience, hope, and the power of human connection." She paused, looking around the room at the faces that had become so meaningful to her. "William, I know you orchestrated this beautiful surprise, and I am overwhelmed by your thoughtfulness. You saw something I couldn't see in myself and found a way to show me the truth. This is the most meaningful gift anyone has ever given me." The room fell silent as Catherine's words hung in the air, the weight of genuine appreciation and love filling the space. William felt tears in his own eyes as he realized that his plan had achieved everything he had hoped for and more. The emotional celebration at Hope Gardens continued for another hour, with Catherine having individual conversations with many of the attendees. Each exchange deepened her understanding of how her work had rippled outward in ways she never could have imagined. William stood nearby, watching with profound satisfaction as his wife rediscovered her confidence and sense of purpose. As the formal gathering began to wind down, Elena approached William and Catherine with a final surprise. "We have one more presentation for you, Catherine. This one comes from some very special people who couldn't be here today but wanted to make sure their voices were heard." The screen illuminated once more, this time showing a video call connection to a hospital room where several young patients were gathered around a tablet. Catherine immediately recognized the children's hospital she had visited regularly over the past 2 years. The young patients, despite their various treatments and medical equipment, beamed with excitement as they saw Catherine's face appear on their screen. "Princess Catherine," called out Emma, the young girl Catherine had met just days earlier who was fighting leukemia. "We wanted to thank you for always remembering our names and asking about our stories. You make us feel like we matter." Catherine's composure finally broke completely as she sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the sight of these brave children who had taken time during their own difficult treatments to participate in this surprise. William quickly moved to stand behind her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders for support. Through her tears, Catherine managed to speak to the children on the screen. "You beautiful, brave souls. You inspire me every single day. Your courage and joy in the face of such challenges teach me more about strength than any book or speech ever could." The children took turns sharing what they were working on. Emma held up pages from the story she was writing, another child showed a painting he had created, and a teenage girl spoke about the support group for young patients that had started after Catherine's visit had inspired the hospital staff to create more peer connections. When the video call ended, the room at Hope Gardens fell into a reverent silence. The power of what they had all witnessed, the genuine love and connection between Catherine and the people she served, was palpable and profound. Dr. Harrison stepped forward once more. "Catherine, what we've seen today represents something that can't be taught or manufactured. The authenticity of your care creates healing that extends far beyond any single visit or conversation. You've shown us that sometimes the most powerful medicine is simply being seen and valued as a human being." As the gathering finally began to disperse, people approached Catherine individually to say goodbye and share one final word of gratitude. Sarah lingered until the end, with little Emily now asleep in her arms. "Catherine," Sarah said softly, "I want you to know that I'm training to become a peer counselor at Sunshine House. Your example showed me that surviving difficult times gives us the power to help others who are walking the same path. You didn't just save me, you showed me how to save others. Catherine embraced Sarah carefully, mindful of the sleeping child. You were always strong, Sarah. I just helped you remember it. And now you're going to help other mothers remember their strength too. That's how healing multiplies. As William and Catherine finally prepared to leave Hope Gardens, Elena walked them to their car with tears still glistening in her eyes. Your Royal Highnesses, today has been extraordinary for all of us. Catherine, I hope you truly understand now how much your work means. And, Prince William, what you've done today, the love and thoughtfulness behind this surprise, it's exactly the kind of gesture that shows the world what genuine partnership looks like. During the drive back to Kensington Palace, Catherine and William sat in comfortable silence, both processing the emotional weight of what they had experienced. Catherine held William's hand tightly, periodically squeezing it as waves of gratitude washed over her. How long did you plan this? She finally asked, her voice still thick with emotion. William smiled, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. About 3 weeks. After our conversation at breakfast that morning when you were doubting yourself, I realized I needed to show you what I could see, that your work creates ripples of healing that extend far beyond what any of us can track. Catherine shook her head in amazement. 3 weeks of coordinating all those people, all those videos, the children from the hospital. William, this must have taken incredible effort. Every second was worth seeing. The look on your face today, William replied sincerely. You've been carrying this weight of uncertainty about whether your work matters. I needed you to see the truth, that you're not just making a difference, you're changing lives in ways that will continue for generations. As they arrived home, Catherine felt transformed by the day's revelations. The doubts that had been plaguing her for weeks had been replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of her role's true impact. That evening, as they shared dinner with George, Charlotte, and Louis, Catherine found herself able to speak about her work with an enthusiasm and confidence that had been missing for weeks. The children noticed the change immediately. Mummy, you seem really happy tonight, Charlotte observed with the perceptiveness of a 9-year-old. Did something good happen at your meeting today? Catherine exchanged a meaningful glance with William before responding. Something very wonderful happened today, sweetheart. I learned about how helping others can create a circle of goodness that keeps growing and growing. George, always interested in the mechanics of how things work, asked, how does helping grow, Mummy? William answered this time, his voice warm with pride for his wife. When Mummy helps someone feel better, that person feels strong enough to help someone else. Then, that person helps another person, and it keeps going like ripples in a pond. Louis, practical as always, asked, like when I help Charlotte with her toys and, then, she helps me with my puzzle? Exactly like that, darling, Catherine said, pulling her youngest son close for a cuddle. When we help each other, everyone feels better and stronger. Later that evening, after the children were settled in bed, William found Catherine in her private study, writing in her journal. She had maintained this practice for years, finding that putting her thoughts and experiences on paper helped her process the emotional weight of her work. What are you writing about tonight? William asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. Catherine looked up with a smile that radiated contentment. I'm trying to capture everything from today. I want to remember not just what happened, but how it felt to realize that doubt and uncertainty are normal parts of caring deeply about something important. She set down her pen and looked directly at William. You know, the most beautiful part of today wasn't just learning about my impact, it was seeing how well you understand me. You knew exactly what I needed to hear and found the perfect way to show me. That kind of insight and love is what makes our partnership so extraordinary. William felt his heart swell with affection for this remarkable woman he had chosen to spend his life with. Catherine, watching you discover your true impact today was one of the most satisfying experiences of my life. You pour so much of yourself into helping others, and you deserve to understand how magnificent that gift is. As they prepared for bed, Catherine reflected on how the day had changed her perspective not just about her work, but about the importance of allowing others to show love and support. She had always been more comfortable giving help than receiving it, but William's surprise had taught her something valuable about accepting gestures of care. I have a confession, Catherine said as they turned off the lights. For weeks, I've been so focused on whether I was doing enough that I stopped paying attention to the signs that I was making a difference. Sarah's healing, the children's enthusiasm, the families who reached out with their stories, the evidence was there all along. William pulled her close in the darkness. Sometimes when we're closest to something, it's hardest to see its true scope. That's what people who love us are for, to help us see ourselves clearly when our own vision gets cloudy. The next morning brought a sense of renewed energy and purpose that seemed to permeate the entire household. Catherine approached her breakfast and morning routine with a lightness that had been absent for weeks. Even the children commented on their mother's obvious happiness. Over the following days, news of the surprise celebration began to circulate quietly within royal circles and among the organizations Catherine supported. While the event had been private, its impact was far-reaching. Staff members at various charities reported increased enthusiasm for their work, inspired by seeing how their efforts contributed to something larger and more meaningful. Margaret from Sunshine House called Catherine personally to share that several mothers from the support group had been motivated by the celebration to pursue their own ways of helping others. Seeing the ripple effect of kindness demonstrated so clearly has inspired them to create their own ripples, Margaret explained. Sarah sent a handwritten note expressing how honored she had felt to be part of the surprise and sharing that her experience had motivated her to accelerate her training as a peer counselor. Being part of showing you your impact helped me understand my own potential impact, she wrote. The children from the hospital sent drawings and letters throughout the following weeks, each one a testament to how the celebration had energized their own spirits. Emma included pages from her growing story collection, and several other young patients mentioned that they were planning to organize their own way of helping other children facing similar challenges. William watched these developments with deep satisfaction, knowing that his gesture had not only restored Catherine's confidence but had also inspired a wave of renewed commitment among the people she served. The surprise had achieved something beyond his original hopes. It had strengthened an entire network of caring individuals. 3 weeks after the celebration, Catherine was scheduled to speak at a conference on mental health advocacy. As she prepared her remarks, she found herself drawing heavily on the insights from that transformational day at Hope Gardens. The most important thing I learned recently, she wrote in her speech notes, is that meaningful work often happens in ways we can't immediately see or measure. When we doubt our impact, we need to trust that genuine care creates ripples of healing that extend far beyond our ability to track them. William read over her speech draft and smiled at how naturally she had integrated the lessons from their shared experience. You're going to inspire every person in that audience, he predicted. They're going to hear something in your voice that they haven't heard before, complete confidence in the value of compassionate service. The speech was indeed powerful, with Catherine delivering her message about authentic connection and sustained impact with a conviction that moved her audience deeply. Several attendees approached her afterward to share how her words had rekindled their own passion for their work. As weeks turned into months, the effects of William's thoughtful gesture continued to unfold. Catherine approached her royal duties with renewed energy and clarity of purpose. She developed new initiatives based on the insights she had gained about the long-term impact of her work. Her confidence in difficult conversations increased, knowing that even brief moments of authentic connection could have lasting significance. Most importantly, the experience had deepened Catherine and William's partnership. They had always supported each other's work, but this surprise had demonstrated a level of understanding and thoughtfulness that strengthened their bond in profound ways. Catherine found herself more open to sharing her doubts and uncertainties, trusting that William's perspective could help her see situations more clearly. The story of William's tender gesture became a quiet legend within their circle, shared as an example of how love expresses itself through deep understanding and careful attention to what the other person truly needs. It was a reminder that the most powerful gifts often come not from grand gestures but from someone seeing us clearly and helping us see ourselves with the same clarity. Years later, as Catherine continued her charitable work with unwavering confidence, she would often think back to that day at Hope Gardens as the moment she truly understood the scope of her calling. The surprise had given her more than reassurance, it had provided her with a lasting understanding of how love multiplies when it's given freely and authentically. For William, the success of his surprise reinforced his belief in the power of thoughtful action motivated by love. He had seen firsthand how understanding someone deeply enough to know exactly what they need can transform not just their perspective but their entire approach to life. The gesture had been a gift to Catherine, but its planning and execution had been equally meaningful for him. The tender gesture that began with a husband's concern for his wife's confidence had grown into something that touched hundreds of lives and created lasting positive change. It stood as a testament to the idea that when we truly see and support the people we love, we enable them to shine their light more brightly for everyone around them.